Moshe was referring to the boycott system that the Canadian Jewish Congress had so well set up with the with the Canada-Israel Committee. I've been asked to talk about some of the successes and some of the challenges that we face in North America. This success that Moshe was talking about, besides the wine group, the wine companies, was the Mountain Equipment Co-op, or MEC. What they try to do is get the anti-Israel or the anti-Zionist organizations were trying to get a boycott resolution inserted into the policy of the company. So one of the things that they did was, the Jewish community, they sent out Mountain Equipment Co-op annual general meeting to all the Jewish community members who are interested in fighting boycotts. This went out and said, you better come to the meeting. It's Thursday, April 29th, and defeat this resolution. So that they really are very proactive, as Ronald said that we really should be. I think we have to be both reactive and proactive. When reactive, when we see that there are attempts to set up boycotts, we can't just let them lie there, because as Robert said so well, you have the atmospherics and you have all this negativity that has to in some way be responded to. However, we have to be proactive. And one of the excellent things done in Canada and the United States, I would say, is the way we handled Israel Apartheid Week on campus. Israel Apartheid Week on campus is a very insidious plan by those anti-Zionist, anti-Jewish organizations that tried to organize a whole week on campuses all over those two countries to vilify Israel, call Israel an apartheid state. They set up tables and so on. And what we did, both in the United States and Canada, is before this, we had people write a lot of letters to administrations and universities. We had a lot of op-eds appear in the local newspapers. And then what we did, when we found out when the actual Israel Apartheid Week started, we sent out our spies and monitors to all these campuses to figure out, to see exactly what was going on. There were, first of all, in the United States, only 14 campuses out of the many, many hundreds that actually celebrated this terrible travesty. So that's, first of all, a very important thing. The other thing is that we found out that it really wasn't greeted with any kind of enthusiasm. We had one at Columbia University. What did it consist of? It consisted of some students who were passing out anti-Israel leaflets, and most of the people were ignoring them. Nobody was really paying attention. So this was one thing. We went to, there was Brown University had one, American University had one, and we found out again, people had set up a boycott table, and not very many students were really paying attention. So that instead of reacting, because we had been prepared, and both the United States and Canada, we had conferred about this, should we put out press releases and protests, we decided to let it die. It was dying anyway, and we decided not to give it any more media coverage or media attention than was warranted. What is really, that was, I think, a success. We've had a dubious success on the university campus at Berkeley. There was, the Student Senate had passed a resolution to divest the university from investments in Israel. The Jewish students on that campus, the Hillels, all of them got together, and they had a big, there was a big town hall meeting about it. That in itself, though, was really what was wrong with this whole issue. They invited the Israeli ambassador to speak. They invited all the Jewish community leaders to speak. Students came out in droves. But the other side also invited their speakers. There were many Palestinian students, many Palestinian sympathizers. There was a lot of booing, a lot of Palestinian flag waving. They got that Richard Falk, who is now that infamous fellow at the United Nations who's in charge of the report on the occupied territories, to be on the telephone, on the speakerphone in this meeting, and there was a lot of screaming and yelling. That's really the worst of it, because in the end, the resolution was defeated, thank goodness, but what you have lingering in the air is, again, what we call part of the normative conversation. Again, Israel's called apartheid, Israel's called a criminal state, Israel is committing genocide. This, again, becomes something that people hear all the time, and they become used to. I want to talk about one other success that we had in Toronto. There was supposed to be a boycott of an exhibition of Israeli artists, and the community went on an offensive. Haifa Art Toronto, can you see it? And it was so successful it was sold out. The same thing with the film festival. The anti-Zionist organizations called for a boycott in Canada of the Israeli Film Festival. Because of boycott, all the films were sold out. As a proactive measure, they invited all the left-wing film critics to see the movies. And the movies were very left-wing. So they said, what's the matter? Why do we have to boycott this? These films are left-wing. So sometimes when you just work ahead, as Ronald said, you can win a victory. One of the things coming down the pike, and I just want to just outline, and I will stop soon, I just want to outline several things that are coming down the pike that are very worrisome. In the United States, the Presbyterian Church is going to call for divestment in its General Assembly that they're having in July. They have, I would say, 10,000 churches in the United States, at least 2 or 3 million people. They're mainstream, and the reason that this is very dangerous is that it will get a lot of publicity, there will be a lot of media coverage. We went through this with the Presbyterian Church United States a few years ago. We were very lucky. We organized with grassroots Presbyterian churches, and we got it defeated. It's come back again. There seems to be a big disconnect between the grassroots on the ground and their leadership, which is a real problem. But we're having a problem now in that a lot of the grassroots churches, the Presbyterian churches, are speaking a lot again to us. They're speaking to the Jews. They're telling us how much they're against divestment. But are they speaking to their leadership? So I think we have our work cut out for this. We expect 2 resolutions to come out of this July event. They're going to resolve to boycott Caterpillar, because Caterpillar is a big, well-known, famous construction company. They make construction equipment, and they're already in their resolution, they're vilifying Caterpillar and calling for a boycott because it sells bulldozers to the Israel Defense Forces that are used against Palestinians. And they also add, again, the bad language, and Israel is an occupier, and Israel is committing all these bad things in the occupied territory. So they drag that in. The other resolution is to call Israel, to brand Israel as an apartheid state. We believe that there is a very bad, this one is based on a very bad report, which it's called the Middle East Studied Report that the Presbyterians have issued. It's as bad as the Goldstone Report and worse. It has all the same accusations in it. I don't have to repeat them. Judging from our contacts and what we're hearing, we think that the resolution on the apartheid state will fall, but we think that the resolution on Caterpillar will fly, and we're going to have to be prepared to boycott and do whatever we can to support a company that's been really living very responsibly. The last thing I just want to go through is that in the delegitimization of Israel, let's not forget the bigger picture. The BDS things are basically pieces and just steps that are leading up to, that are meant to lead up to the delegitimization of the state and ultimately the dismantling of the state. By filling the air with all of this negative diatribe, they want to use all of these steps to influence the United Nations and the international bodies to call Israel a delegitimized state. So coming down the pipe again, we're going to have elections soon in the United Nations Human Rights Council. And there are many bad countries that are up there for elections, so we have work cut out there. In May, in the United Nations, the Non-Proliferation Treaty is coming up, and Egypt there is pushing for a nuclear-free Middle East, and everybody here in this room understands exactly what that means. That's coming up soon. The Goldstone Report, the follow-up report, is coming up now. They are working on it already as we speak. And in June, Mr. Richard Falk is going to present his report on the status of what's happening in the occupied territories. We have a lot of work coming up for us, and we hope that we will be able to, everyone in their country and in their community, mobilize all their forces like we do in Canada, and fight all these things as best as we can. I'll end on a very positive note, which made me laugh in surprise. When I called the Mexican Jewish community and I asked Mauricio and Renee, what is going on in your community regarding boycotts? They said, we have no BDS in Mexico. So at least someplace they're not fighting this.